Hello, everyone. This is Reza Dorani, and welcome to another session with me, live with Reza. And today, I am honored, privileged to have someone from Microsoft actually come and join us to talk about a very important topic, which is not talked about a lot, which is licensing. And thank you, Priya Kodukula from Microsoft. Thank you for joining me today on Live with Reza. Welcome, Priya.
Thank you, Reza. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to this session. I'm Priya Kodukula. I'm a senior program manager on Power Automate Cloud Flows team. My primary focus is licensing, API limits, throttling, the topic of the hour. So I'm very excited to be here. And before we start, I just want to take a moment and thank you, Reza, because the service that you have been providing to community has been very significant. You actually probably don't know this. I never told you this, but I am one of your audience. And when I started in Cloudflows like a year ago, I was watching your videos. One of those videos was expressions, 101, 201, 301, 401. I watched all of those. And I thought it was such an easy way to explain. I created the same flow you created in that video. And anytime somebody asks me questions about expressions, I have that flow. I open it and say, here are the inputs, here are the outputs. Here is an easy way to get your feet wet. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for doing this. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to also be part of this.
Thank you. You are most. I'm actually honored to have you here. And just to because Priya spoke nice about me, I got to give it back.
Oh.
But I'm going to give it back in the true sense. You know what? I actually messaged her and I was like, I was struggling on licensing. I wanted to do a session on licensing, and I was like, let's face it, licensing is not an easy topic to cover. And I know Priya from Microsoft. She talks all about licensing, and I was like, she's the right person, but I was doubting, whether she'll say yes or no. Maybe she's busy. It's a weekend. Let's face it, it's not easy. Everybody has personal time. I asked her, and trust me, within 5 seconds, she said yes. I changed the timing and the date. I messed it up 3 times, and all 3 times when I went back to her, she was like, yes. So that's how sweet she truly is, and I'm really, really happy that she accepted this. And thank you, Priya, for joining us today. So let's not waste any time. Then let's get started with our session on Power Automate and Power Apps licensing. We're going to try and cover as much as we can in the hour. It's a very vast topic. We're focusing on apps and flows. You have questions, I would recommend you to wait, because we will have live Q&A at the end. So at the end, when I'll open the floor for Q&A, you can start posting your questions, and I will start popping them up on the screen, and I and Priya will try our best to answer your questions. So without wasting any time, I'm going to swap straight away to our presentation, and we're going to get started with the presentation. Okay, I am now sharing my screen. Priya, can you please confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So Microsoft Power Platform, we are talking about licensing today. It's very important to understand that the platform itself covers a lot of different aspects. We have Power BI, we have Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. These are the 4 main pillars of the Power Platform. And our focus today will purely be on apps and flows, which is Power Apps and Power Automate. And at the bottom there, you see Microsoft Dataverse, Data Connectors, AI Builder. They also play a key role, because at the end of the day, your apps and flows, you are connecting it to some data source. You are building your apps and flows by connecting to your data, and you do so through the most important piece here, which is Data Connectors. And that's why I thought it's very important for us to at least throw some light on what are connectors. This is the textbook definition of connectors. A connector is a proxy or a wrapper around an API that allows you to talk to your data source. Reza, that's confusing. Well, let's make it easy. You want to connect to your data source no matter where it lives in the Power Platform. All you have to do is create a connection using the over 450 data connectors that are available today. And that you do so by connecting to your data through the connector. And it's very important to understand that these connectors are classified. They are classified in 3 categories: standard, premium, and preview. And these categorizations are what defines whether you need a premium license or whether a seeded license is enough for you to create or work with your apps and flows. Now, Reza, how do I know about connectors? How do I know the connector that I'm leveraging? Is that a standard connector? Is that a premium connector? How do I know that? Well, for that, there's actually a very nice link which is called aka.ms/connectors. I will post all these links in the chat as well. This takes you straight away to the connector documentation in docs.microsoft.com. You can go to list all connectors, which lists out every connector that's available in the Power Platform. And here you can clearly see if those connectors are premium, they are standard, or they are in preview. And you have these symbols here that highlight that fact. Now, I and Priya were doing some prep for this, and Priya said, Reza, there's an easier way. And what is that? Well, just go to flow.microsoft.com. So just sign into Flow. On the left-hand side, you have the option here called connectors. If you select this, it will list out all the connectors that are available. And right here for every connector, we have this option wherein it tells you whether it's standard or premium. If it is premium, it will have this premium tag. So I'm going to try and zoom in here. If you look at Microsoft Dataverse, it is a premium connector. If I look at Outlook, OneDrive, SharePoint, these are standard connectors because they don't have that premium tag below it. And here you can even search for a connector. So if I'm looking out for SQL, for example, I can just search for SQL and I can clearly see that the connectors that are available for SQL are all premium. So that's how easy it is for you to distinguish whether a connector is standard or premium. When you're actually calling a connector or connecting to a connector in apps and flows, even there you are highlighted or notified that you're using a premium action if it was. So it's very simple to find out if your connector is premium or not. And why are we talking about connectors? Well, because the licensing is actually tied to this in a big way. And now, having set the stage for connectors, let's now talk about the licensing as it stands today, as of the recording of this video, for Power Automate, and then we will head over to Power Apps. So let's begin with Power Automate licensing, and this is going to be covered by Priya. So Priya, I'm going to hand over the mic to you.
I took it on. Thank you. Next slide, please. So as humans, we are really built for doing strategic and creative work. But often we find ourselves doing manual, repetitive tasks over and over again. So that's exactly where Power Automate comes into picture. You can automate your flows, like basically all the manual tasks, so that you can focus on the strategic work. It is a low-code platform. You don't need to have coding experience. And we have thousands of templates available for you to get started quickly and to learn how to write flows over time. You can automate at scale. You can also automate both your legacy applications and also your cloud applications. Sometimes, I mean, this is an example that is close to me because before working in Microsoft, I worked in a company where I was helping to build an application for customer care service. And one of the things is that it takes, whenever somebody calls the customer care, it used to take a lot of time because the rep has to log into multiple systems to gather data while the time that the customer is on call. That would have been, and all of those are legacy systems that didn't have APIs. They were built long, long ago. If we had desktop flows at that point of time, it would have been so helpful because customer rep can just start a flow that is actually taking the customer data, filling in all the details and getting the data from all the systems while the rep is understanding what the problem is with the customer. So you can go do that with legacy applications. You can also use a bunch of cloud connectors. We have about 527 and the list keeps growing every single day. And you can connect your legacy and cloud connectors using Power Automate. You can add AI Builder for more automation. You can train models, and that has been extremely helpful. One of the biggest features that people use. And you can also automate more securely with Power Automate. So that's really the pitch for Power Automate. Let's dive into how can you purchase, what are the different licenses. So there are two sets of licenses. The first one is seeded license. What does seeded mean? If you already have an Office license, if you already have a Dynamics or Power Apps license or Windows license, by just having that license, you get some of the Power Automate capabilities included in it. And so that's when you really have to understand, okay, I already have this license. Do I need to buy a separate license or not? We would discuss that a little bit more detail. The first thing I would say is, when you have seeded license, your context, like if you're creating flows, they have to be within the context of the application. What that means, like, that's a big word. What does it really mean? So I have a Power App. My Power App is talking to Dataverse, and whenever I add a new row into a table in Dataverse, my flow gets triggered. So now this flow is exactly using something that is used by this app. So that's really what is called in context. The moment you are out of the context, meaning that you're creating a flow that sends you a reminder when your boss emails you, that is entirely different from the Power App or the Dynamics license that you purchased. That flow is called out of context, and you need a separate license for it. As long as you are using flows within the context of this seeded applications, you don't need a separate license for Power Automate. And there is a slight difference between Office Dynamics and Power Apps there. So if you have an Office license, which most of you already do, you have a school and work account, you already have an Office license, you can use standard connectors as part of Office license. This is where Reza was explaining what are standard connectors. And if you are a Dynamics or a Power Apps customer, you can use standard connectors, and you can also use premium connectors on top of it, as long as you are within the context of the application. Windows licenses, that is a new approach, that this is very specific for desktop flows. I have a comparison of slides, so I will talk through it a little bit more too. Next slide, please, Reza.
And Priya, just to clarify, desktop flows, you mean the robotic process automation flows?
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that. I'm so used to saying those words. I sometimes forget, people don't know. The next one is standalone plans. This is these are plans that Power Automate offers. And these are, when do you actually buy standalone plans? Like the example that I stated previously, right? I need to create a flow that's not within the context of my app. I need a flow that uses premium connector, but I only have Office license. At that point of time, you can go buy Power Automate licenses. There are 4 licenses, only 3 active. One of them is grandfather. The first one is a Power Automate per user plan. This is when a user, like if you want to license a particular user, the user can create unlimited flows with that license. They have full access to all premium connectors. They have access to standard as well. And they have access to business process flows. What are business process flows? It is more for if you want organization level flows where you want to do a repeated predefined steps by entire organization. That's when you would actually go create a business process flow. And if there is a need for that, you would buy one of the premium licenses. Similarly, you have custom connectors. What that means? So we talked about the connectors which are available in cloud, like the Outlook, Word, all of these are cloud connectors. They have APIs readily available. And then there are legacy. You could use robotic process automation to automate legacy applications. But then what if you own an API that doesn't have a connector that was provided by Microsoft already? That's when you use a custom connector. You can create your own connector over the API and wrap it around it and use that connector in your flows. And if there is a need for that, you would need one of the premium licenses. Similarly, on-premise gateways, what that means is if you have services that are on-premise and you want to connect your cloud services to that, you would need a gateway. It's basically a secure channel to talk to your on-premise services. So if you need any of these, like standard connectors, premium connectors, business process flows, custom connectors, on-premise gateway, that when you will really need to go buy a Power Automate per user plan. Then there is Power Automate per user with attended RPA.
Priya, sorry to jump in here. So if I am using business process flows, which ties in very closely with model-driven apps, which requires Dataverse. Dataverse is a premium connector, so business process flows obviously become premium. That's why you need that license, right? Uh, Custom connectors, they are considered premium again,
Correct.
and that's why you need an additional license. On premises data gateways, this is where you connect to your data sources on premises. That is also considered premium. So if you need to connect to any of those premium connectors, or you've built a custom connector or anything on premises, in that case you have to have one of these license types. Is that correct, Priya?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, just to clarify, I'm trying to learn along the way as well.
Please jump in, ask questions. This should be more interactive, definitely. The next license is Power Automate per user with attended RPA. So this is basically the next step up, right? Like with Power Automate per user, you get everything that per user gives, and one thing above. That one thing is robotic automation, which is you can automate your legacy applications using desktop flows. It also includes some AI capabilities too, so you can automate intelligently too. So that's the second Power Automate per user with attended RPA. The prices that are displayed there are US prices. Based upon regions, the prices are going to be different. Right now, there is a limited deal that is going on. Even though it says $40 there, there is a discounted price that is going on right now until September. So if you are looking to buy robotic process automation licenses, now is the right time. The next one is Power Automate per flow. So this is when you have a flow and you shared it with your entire organization, and everybody from your organization can actually go invoke it and get value out of it. Instead of licensing every single one of them with a premium license, it's easier to just license the flow itself. That's when you would go with a Power Automate per flow plan. The initial bundle comes with 5 flows. You will pay $500 for 5 flows, but any additional flow that you need will be $100 extra. So you can just add on. You put your business critical flows here, and you also have higher API requests by choosing a per flow plan. And I'll get to what that means in a later slide. The last one is a Power Automate P1 and P2 plans. These are grandfathered plans. These are no longer available for sale. But if you already have these plans from previous, we would continue to support you until the end of the tenure of that particular plan. So I just listed it there so that you have that for comparison too. Yep, so this is the comparison across all the different plans. This contains both seeded and standalone plans. Feel free to take a screenshot. This would be helpful when you're thinking about which one to buy. The first one is per flow plan, and now the second column is API request limits per day. What that really means is when your flow is running, it consumes API calls. Every action within the flow consumes an API call. And there are limits on how many actions you can consume in a 24-hour time limit. And that's really what the API limits are. Now, you can ask me, there is an entitlement and there is a transition period. What does that mean? So when the licensing was announced, it was announced a couple of years ago, we want to make sure that we provide you the tools so that you can monitor your usage, you can know, and you can figure out what licenses you need based upon how your users are using it. And until we provide those tools, we wanted to give higher API requests than what you are entitled to just make sure there is no friction. So that is why we are in transition period right now. So you will see higher limits than like 10 times more higher limits than what you're entitled to. But this is only during transition period. We think that the transition period ends next year, early next year. So until then you have a limit, and after that we will enforce to the limits that were actually entitled. So for a per flow plan, the entitlement is 15,000 API requests per day per flow. Yeah. But the transition limit, it is like 500K per flow. So that's a extremely extremely higher API limits today. It's because we are in this transition grace period. So then with per flow plan, you can have standard connectors, you can get premium connectors, on-premise gateway, custom connectors, all that. You do not have RPA attended because RPA would need a separate license if you want unattended plans. You do not have AI Builder credits that comes with it. And then there is and before I move to the next one, AI Builder credit. So anytime you are using AI Builder, the models actually consume service credits. And in one of the plans, the RPA plans, we actually have AI Builder included in it. So you can train your models to use AI. And then there is Dataverse database capacity. What that really means is that if you are an admin and if you want to create a brand new environment, you would need at least 1 GB Dataverse database capacity. And here, for every premium license that you buy, we give you 50 MB. So if you have like 4 premium licenses of Power Automate per flow, now you have like 50 to 4, 200 MB, and that is added to your tenant level pool. And that tenant level pool is shared across all the environments within that pool. So that's where database capacity comes into picture. And then there is Dataverse file capacity, which is needed when you want to store your images, PDFs, etc. This is also pooled at the tenant level, and every time you buy an extra premium license, it gets added to the tenant level pool.
So Priya, from what I'm conceiving from this slide deck is, I'm using a premium connector. I need an extra license. Now that license also comes with API limits per day. So there are limits. Even after acquiring a license, I need to be mindful of how many API calls my flows are consuming, and I may need additional capacity. It's great that there's transition coming, wherein the transition period will offer more API runs, but it's important to understand that there are limits there. I can't just write a flow that reads data from SQL that has 1 million records. I loop through it and I push it into SharePoint. I can't just do that with flow, purely because I'm going to be limited by the number of API calls inside the flow, even though I have the premium license.
That is true. And one additional point there is, so if I have a per user license and I created 4 flows, the API limits apply to all 4 flows. Like across those 4 flows, all the runs, how many API calls did I consume? Yeah. The moment it gets over the limit, occasional overages are okay. Like, I mean, if it is like a 500 additional actions, we won't throttle you. But if there is continuous use of additional actions, you will experience throttling. Throttling basically is your flows will slow down and you will see a banner. And once the limit time period renews, it will just pick up where it left off.
I actually had a flow that went over limits and it said the flow is suspended, wait for the next period. So I actually had a scenario like that.
Yeah, that is specifically when your flow is continuously being throttled for 14 days, then they would, because it is consuming higher actions. I saw a question in the chat, the transition period. So what transition period is? It is, since we announced our licensing until now, we are not being very strict on the API limits that are added to the entitlements. We are giving more API limits, and we would continue to do that during the transition period. This is really a grace period. During the grace period, we want to give you additional tools on how you can monitor your usage and then react based upon it. Once you have all the tools and have time to react, we will go back and enforce it to the entitlements. Okay, next slide. So similar to this, like we have add-ons. You have these base licenses, and you can, if you want additional capacity, you can go buy add-ons. So Power Automate capacity add-on is a perfect example. You have these API limits, like a per flow has 15K. Now, if you want more than that, your flow is genuinely needing that, then you can go buy a capacity add-on, which gives you 10,000 requests per day for like $50 a month. So that is something that you can, this add-on can be used for Power Automate and Power Apps as well, if you need additional capacity. The thing that to note there though, today, because we are still in transition period, the add-ons are assignable to an environment, but they are not assignable for users or flows. So that's why, like, because you just bought an add-on, it will not automatically unthrottle your flow. There is, because we are still in this transition period. what you would need to do is that you still need to buy the add-on to stay compliant. And if you have a business critical flow that needs that actions, you can call support so they can give you temporary relief until this transition period is complete. So that's capacity add-ons. And also, because out of all our plans today, per flow gives the highest API request. So if you have a flow that is using like 300K actions per day, it is much more easier to go buy a per flow plan for that and assign it, so you get higher API limits. The second one is unattended add-on. This is if you like the attended RPA is really when you want to just log into the system and run the automation yourself. Like the example that I said previously, where customer care rep, somebody calls a customer care rep, he would enter the mobile number and then starts the robotic process automation. That is when the customer is logged in and actively typing in. If there is a situation where you want to run automation on a remote desktop somewhere that you do not want somebody to be there present and logged in, that's when you would use unattended RPA. This is an add-on that you would buy per bot. Unattended RPA, thing about that, all these add-ons need a base license to go with. Yeah, so after you have a base license, then you can go buy add-on for additional features. In this case, unattended add-on needs either a per user attended RPA plan or per flow plan to be able to have this add-on added to the base license. So that's unattended add-on. And then we have AI Builder Capacity add-on. So with attended RPA plan, you have credits included in your plan. But if there is any other plan where users want to do AI Builder, then they can go buy this capacity add-on. It gives 1 million service credits per month. So you can understand your usage and buy as many capacity add-ons. So these are all stackable. So you don't have to buy just one add-on. You can buy multiple. And basically they get all added up, how many ever you bought together. I would also talk a little bit about how do you purchase this. So if you are an admin, you can go to the Office 365 Admin Center. That's where you'll go buy all of your licenses and add-ons. That's the place to go buy. But then if you buy a Power Automate per flow license, actually, let me take a step back. If you bought a per user license, attended RPA or just per user license, or any of the seeded plans, you can directly go to Office 365 Admin Center and go find a user and assign that license to that user. But if you bought a per flow plan, then you buy it in Admin Center, like O365 Admin Center, and then you would switch over to PPAC Admin Center. This is where you will go assign this add-ons or per flow plan to an environment. And per flow has one additional step. Adding it to environment is just not enough. You need to switch back to flow portal and find a flow where you want to assign the per flow, and then go assign it. We are updating our documentation, so all these steps have screenshots, and it is easier for you to do it. We understand it's not ideal. We want to get to a place where you can do everything together in one portal. We are not there yet, but we would absolutely update our documentation to make it clear for you.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, Priya.
No problem. Back to you now.
Yeah. All right. So next part, before we get into Q&A, the last part, Power Apps licensing. So Priya covered what's Flow, it's for automation. What's Power Apps for? It allows you to easily build web and mobile apps with a fully featured low-code, no-code development experience for empowering your business users. From a licensing standpoint for Power Apps, once again, the question is on the connectors. Do I need premium connectors? Do I need custom connectors? Do I need anything that requires me to have a premium license? For example, connecting to my data source on premises. If yes, I need the premium plan. And these are the plans that are being offered. Now, very recently, there was an announcement made around the plans being changed from October 1st. There's a good change coming in terms of the price. The pricing has been slashed by half. So I wanted to put the plan that's upcoming from October 1st, 2021. So effective October 1st, this is the pricing and the plans, the two plans that are available for Power Apps. We have the first plan, which is the per user plan, which is $20 per user per month. And with this, a user can run unlimited apps that use any of the premium connectors. On the other side, we have the per app license, which is $5 per user per app per month. It's very important to understand the per app plan is again per user. It is per user per app per month. And for that, you will pay a $5 fee per month. And with this, a user can be assigned access to only one app or one portal, Power Apps portal, wherein there are premium features which are being consumed. So these are the two plans that will be made available from October 1st. The plans are the same, the pricing is changing. Per user plan will go down to $20, per app plan will go down to $5. Both of this is per user per month. Also, until October 1st, 2021, just like in Power Automate, Priya mentioned about the promotional offer, in Power Apps as well, there is a promotional offer ongoing, which has been extended till October 1st only. The per user plan, which is going to become $20, is now being offered for only $12 per user per month. However, it requires a minimum purchase of 5,000 licenses. At the same time, the per user per app, the per app plan, which is $5, is being offered at $3. Once again, you need a minimum purchase of 200 licenses. So these are the promotional offers that are only available till October 1st. It's important that I call out what's being offered today. Effective October 1st, it's going to be $20 for the per user plan, which gives them access to unlimited apps, and $5 for the per app plan, which gives a user access to one app or one portal with premium features. And where are we today? What's the current state as of the recording of this session? We are prior to October 1st, 2021 currently. If you look at the pricing that's available today, this is what the pricing looks like. The per user plan is being offered at $40 and the per app plan is $10. So as you saw before, effective October 1st, this pricing is going to be slashed into half. If you have already acquired these plans, automatically your licensing, your fees or your licensing fees will automatically be slashed by half based on how many per user and per app plans you have acquired. Having covered the premium part of Power Apps right now, so these are the only two plans. If you have the seeded plan or if you have the Office plan, let's focus on the Office plan. What do I get with a standard Office license? You do get access to run apps and flows. So Priya covered the flows part earlier, wherein if you can use any standard connectors, it's exactly the same with Power Apps. If you have an Office 365 plan, you get Power Apps use rights along with it. You can run custom apps, which are only Canvas apps. You can run as many apps as you want, as long as those apps use standard connectors. If you have an app that uses premium connectors, you need to think about those two options for premium licensing. With the Office plan, you cannot run model-driven apps or portals. Both of them leverage Microsoft Dataverse, which is a premium connector, so you need premium licensing for that. Standard connectors is a yes. You can connect to any standard connector. Premium connectors, custom connectors, anything related to on-premises through the data gateway, they are all premium, so they are not included in the Office plan. There is also another piece to this, which is Microsoft Dataverse for Teams. That is included with Office 365 licensing. In these live sessions, I covered that entire section along with its licensing part. So if you missed that part, I would recommend you to go back and watch those live sessions, which are available on my channel for on-demand viewing. Dataverse, connecting to Dataverse, they are all premium, so they are not included in Office licensing. You can, of course, use Power Automate here as long as Power Automate has standard connectors. And with your Office plan, you do not get any capacity for Dataverse. You need premium licensing to add capacity. Priya covered that earlier in Power Automate. If you look at the screenshot here on the right hand side at the bottom, depending upon the plan you choose, the per app plan or the per user plan, you get certain amount of capacity, database capacity added to your tenant. And once again, you need minimum 1 GB capacity to create a new environment. So that's what the Power Apps Office plan covers. One key thing in this slide is right at the end. That's the number of API calls that a user with a Office plan can make in a 24-hour period. And that number is just 2000. So if you have the Office plan, you're using standard connectors, you can only call 2000 API requests in a 24-hour period. So that covers the licensing part of Power Apps and Power Automate. Now we are going to switch over to Q&A. So I'm going to get me and Priya back on screen. So before we get to live Q&A, to my subscribers on my community tab on my YouTube channel, Priya, I had gone out on my community tab and mentioned that I gave my subscribers the opportunity to ask questions, to vote for questions. And I have a few top rated questions that were voted and rated. So I'm going to post those questions out here. And let's try and take those questions live. Let's try and answer them live. And once we finish that, we'll go to live Q&A. So everybody who's asking questions, please wait. We will get to you. Okay.
Awesome.
So let's get started. Priya, if you're ready, here's the first question that's coming on screen. So the first question is, how does licensing work for external users, which are basically guest users? And there's a follow-up to that as well. Is there a limited time frame license available? I'm assuming maybe I need a guest user to access my app for 6 months, and maybe that guest user goes away and some other user comes in, so maybe I can transfer it or something on those lines.
There are two things that you can do. The first thing is, like, if you are a guest user into a tenant, you can bring your own license, meaning you already have a license in your home tenant. You can use the same license to access like premium features. If it's already a premium license, you can access those features here. So that's one thing, you can bring your own license. There is a known issue with that, where the API limits of the original license is not being respected right now, but that's because we are in transition period. You won't see the problem because the limits are higher anyway, but we would fix it by the time we end the transition period. Separate thing is, if they don't have a license from their home tenant, what can I do? Like, I mean, how do I make sure that these people get access? You can assign trials to this users. Today, you have two types of trials. One is an admin trial. This trial is started from within O365 Admin Center. This trial is for like 30 days. And the way you can get to this trial is you can go to O365 Admin Center, you can go purchase services, and you can search for a plan. For example, I search for per user plan. I go into the details. There is a link that says start a trial. The moment you start a trial, you will get 25 seats assigned to you. And now you are free to assign those seats to any of the external guest users. They get the 30-day limit. And once that limit expires, with admin trials, admin can go renew the trial one more time. So they literally get 60 days.
So 2 times.
Yeah, so that's for admin trials. Separately, we have user trials as well, which is the user themselves can go to the Power Automate pricing page. The screenshot we just showed is from that page too. Search for Power Automate pricing, you would find it. Then there is a try now button in those plans that takes them to trial. That's a user started trial. They can also start trials within the product. Like, for example, you have access to premium connectors, but you do not have access to RPA. And the moment you go into desktop flows tab, you would be asked to start a trial. So those are in product trials. So you can start an admin trial and assign it to a guest user. The user themselves can go start the user trial from either pricing page or from within product to allow the limited time frame usage.
Perfect. So basically, what I'm hearing is, if I'm an external user, I can bring my own license. So if I have a premium license in my tenant, I'm already covered for any other tenant, right? If I have the per user plan, for example, for Power Apps, I am covered everywhere in every tenant as long as I'm invited as a guest in that tenant. That's great.
Correct.
And I'm just thinking, if let's say, Priya, I have the office plan in my organization, right? So
Mhm.
that gives me access to standard connectors. And let's say, Priya, you built an app with premium connectors and
Mhm.
you share that app with me. In
Mhm.
that case, even though I have a license, I'm not licensed for the premium aspect of it. So in that case, two things: either I buy it in my tenant, or you grant me that license in your tenant. So
Correct.
either ways, the guest user has to be licensed. There's no magic license that pops up and they get adjusted to it. And let's not forget, trials at the end of the day are trials. I'm giving an MVP or a non-Microsoft viewpoint here. Uh, let's face it, trials are 30 days, as Priya said. It can be extended twice. I wouldn't count on that because it may be extended two times today, maybe three in future, maybe back to one. So don't count on trials. Trials are meant to try things, so don't use that for production scenarios. But what Priya mentioned actually is something that I use an app in a day. When I build a tenant for users to come and start trying things out, I always use the trial license because I know that I'm okay for a 30-day period to test out the features. So thank you, Priya, for answering that
I
question.
would add one other thing. While admin trials are only 30 days, the user trials are for 90 days. So you get a little longer to
Longer trials.
test it.
Okay, going on ahead. So here's the next question, which is something that which is something that we actually, this was probably the number one voted question, is what are these API limits? How
Mhm.
are they counted? I like that question. How are they counted? And is it per user or does it depend upon license type? So that's the question around API limits. And I think for this, Priya, you have a slide. So let me swap over back to the slides quickly, so we can try and cover this in a little bit more detail. And I can also go through a flow that I built, and Priya can tell us how the counting works there.
Absolutely. So if you have a license, you have an API limits that are associated with that license. That API limits are across the runs of all of your flows that ran in like 24-hour time frame. The way to think about how I can count my requests, today, every trigger, every action consumes at least one API request. It can be a simple compose action, initialize variable, HTTP action, built-in action, any kind of action, any kind of trigger consumes at least one. Even if you like, if the action succeeded or failed, it will still consume. It will still consume limits. And skipped actions do not count because the action never executed. It won't count towards API limits. And then if you have some situations, you have multiple API requests consumed by one action. For example, if that action is part of a loop and that loop runs like 5 times, now it consumes 5 API requests, just that action, because the fact that it's in a loop now. And if you have multiple expressions within the same API request, within the same action, it would still only count one API request. Any retries, pagination, all of those things will add to the API request as well. Yes, like somebody said on the chat, please take a screenshot. We'll also have this in documentation, so you know how to count it.
Yeah.
One thing to add here is, if you bought a per user license, that should be across all your flows, right? But today in transition period, even though you have a per user license, the limits at transition period limits are uh,
Flow level.
at the flow level right
Flow
now.
level.
Sorry, I got a pop up there. Yeah. So yeah.
So one thing that I'm observing here, Priya, in this, at least a key takeaway for me here, is the second last line. An action can have multiple expressions, but it is still counted as one API request. Many people, many people try and avoid expressions because, yeah, it's complex, right? Expressions is not an easy language to learn. It's another syntax. You got to learn it. But here's one more reason why expressions are so important: is you can actually club 10 different actions together, like do a substring, get the second attribute, split it by X. Instead of writing 10 actions, I can do everything in one action using expressions. So very powerful, very important to learn expressions. Why am I talking about this? Because I'm planning a video series on expressions. Okay. Uh, having said this, it's easy to look at a PowerPoint slide and say, okay, this is how it works. But let's look at it live in action, right? So right before this call, I built a very simple flow. So let's assume this flow runs once a day. Let's just assume. Okay. I'm going to try and count the API actions live, and Priya is going to tell me if that is true or not. My flow is being triggered. This is one action gone. I am setting a variable 2. I'm running a loop. The loop itself is counted as 1, so that's 3. Let's say this loop runs 5 times. So that's 5 multiplied by the number of actions inside the loop. I have 1 action, so this would be count as 5 actions. If I had 3 actions here and they all were to execute in a loop that runs 5 times, that's 5 into 3, that's 15. So that's how the maths works. So whether you are querying a data source like I'm doing in this case to query an Excel file in OneDrive, or whether I'm just creating a variable within the context of the flow, every action that you add, any action, is considered as an API call. Things that will run in a loop also count towards an API call. So that's very, very important to understand. And Priya, correct me if there's anything that I missed on this part.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think as you talk through, I also thought about one easy way. So if it is getting harder to remember and then count all of these things, one thing that you can do is you can just test the flow or run the flow once and go to analytics right there. So if you already have this flow running, you would see in the last 30 days how many API requests did it consume. So that report shows up here. So yeah, let's see. This makes it easier.
And that's the actions. That's showing me how many actions the flow has executed in a day, and it could depend on how many times the flow ran as well, right?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. If the flow ran like 50 times, obviously multiplied by 50. So this makes it easier. Like without you having to count, just look at the analytics by flow and see how many API requests this flow is consuming.
So Priya, some questions from me on the fly. If I was to test my flow, does that count towards API calls? If I'm just testing, I'm just building.
Yes, it does.
It does?
It does.
I hoped it did not, but okay.
I know.
Okay. Interesting. And very important thing, guys. Very important. Remember, I'm looking at a flow run. My account may be running 10 other flows. Don't forget, the API request is for my account across all the flows. It's not just one flow. And someone asked a very good question, and I think that comes later as well, is there a report that I can see that tells me how many API actions have I consumed across all my flows in a 24-hour period?
So there are two parts in it. One, as a maker, how can I see how many actions have I consumed? As an admin, how can I see how many actions this user has consumed across our flows? Right now, we have admin reports that are in private preview going on. And if you are interested to join the private preview, ping me on LinkedIn and give me your tenant ID in private chat so I can add you to private preview. What that is admin can go and see, they can download an Excel file and it says, these are all the users, these are the object IDs of the user, and this is their entitlement based upon their license, and this is how many actions they have consumed in that day. So it's a number. What that tells you is that, okay, this user has an entitlement of 15K, they are using 25K per day across all their flows. So now you know either this user needs to buy a higher license, either you need to get a capacity add-on, or you can go talk to the maker to go optimize the flows. There are multiple ways of optimizing. One thing that Reza just said, right? Like instead of using loops and trying to get data, use expressions that will reduce the amount of API calls this flow is consuming.
And just to give you a real world story, I came across a flow that had like 5 loops running. I literally transformed it in expressions, and Priya actually tested it using analytics. It came down from 1,000 API calls per day just for that flow to 210. So you can see what a big difference it can make if you truly know expressions and you know how to play around things.
Yeah.
Anyways, moving ahead from APIs, I think we've covered API requests in depth. Here is another great question. Can we use solutions with a Microsoft 365 seeded license? Let's assume an Office license, given that we use only standard connectors with apps and flows. Can I use solutions is the question. Do I need a license for using solutions?
You do not need a premium license. Your Office license covers for creating solution flows. You can create child flows within default environment. But if you need to go into a different environment that is not default, that environment should have Dataverse attached to it. And easy way for you to is, if the environment doesn't already have a Dataverse, you can go reach out to your admin to attach a Dataverse database. Remember when we talked about licensing, for every premium licensing somebody buys in the tenant, there is an added
Yeah.
capacity at the tenant level. Now that capacity is used to create a new database and attach it to the environment. So Office seeded license, please feel free to use solutions. Solutions is really the path forward. You have better version control. So that's really where we want everybody to go develop their flows using solution flows today.
So here's the big news, right? You want solutions, it's free. You don't need a premium license. All you need is an environment with with a database. And the default environment already comes with a database. If not, the moment your admin can always spin off one, at least in the default environment. So you can use solutions there, and solutions are very powerful. There's a lot of good documentation on it, so do read about it. And yeah, so no premium license needed for creating solutions. Okay. Next question is a scenario. The scenario is a user has a Power Automate per user license, basically a premium license. The user then goes ahead and creates a flow that runs automatically when a new item is created in a SharePoint list. And that flow uses premium actions, maybe calls ServiceNow or Salesforce. How does the licensing work for that flow when another user who does not have a premium license adds a record in a SharePoint list? So that's the question here.
Yeah,
Is it-
makes sense. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, Priya, go ahead.
So this is a common question. The way, like, this is primarily to identify who needs a license, right? Like, and there are two rules for it. One, if you are using an automated or a scheduled flow. So automated flows are the ones that monitor for an action, like in this case, SharePoint, right? Like Power Automate monitors SharePoint to see if a new item was created in a list and automatically triggers it. Then there are scheduled flows where you can go say, send me a project report on Sunday morning or send me a reminder for my timesheets on Friday morning. That is something that you can do. So in both automated and scheduled flows, they always run in the context of the owner. So only the owner needs a premium license if this is being, if the flow is already using premium connectors. There are instant flows, and these are manual flows where I'm just done with my laundry. I want my family to go fold the laundry. I can go click a button that reminds them to do so. So that instant flow, you can, and PowerApps flows, those two kinds of flows, every user who is going to use the flow will need a license. Because in these cases, the flow will be shared to users as run-only users, and they can go invoke the flow themselves. So anytime the user is invoking a flow, and those situations, whoever has the access to invoke the flow needs a license. And if it is only being invoked by automated or scheduled, only the owner needs a license. In the example, this specific example, if the trigger uh, if the trigger is monitoring the SharePoint list and gets automatically triggered, only the owner needs a premium license.
Perfect. So back to us. Great question. So it all depends on the trigger of the flow. So look at the different factors. Who's triggering the flow? Where is the flow being triggered from? Is it a flow is being called from Power Apps? Yes, no. Who's running this? There are so many factors to consider. So it's very important to know these things.
One thing to add there is, if you go to the flow details of a flow, please, Reza, can you show the flow details? It will
Absolutely.
tell you what kind of flow it is. So you go to a flow and click on it. In the details section, there is type. That type says whether it is instant or automated, right? So like the moment you say an instant flow, every user who has access to this flow will need will need license. If it is a different flow where it just says automated right here, and the owner is just Reza, and Reza only needs the permission there. Even if it is shared with a multiple, even if it is shared with multiple other folks, only Reza needs premium license here.
Perfect. Great points. All right. All right. Here comes another scenario, very common one, which kind of interrelates with what we just discussed. I have a power app, and very common, right? I have a power app, and from the power app, I call a flow. From the power app, I trigger the flow. That flow uses premium actions. The power apps does not. Does every user who is accessing the power app in that case need a premium license?
Yep, that is the recommendation. So every user who has access to get value out of a premium connector will need a premium license. In this case, every user does.
Perfect. All right. Two or three more questions, and then we'll get to live Q&A. Here's another good question. How can we create more Power Platform environments? So I spun up my tenant, I get the default environment. I'm trying to create a new environment, and it says you don't have capacity. So do I need a premium license to create an environment, or how do I get that capacity?
So if you you can either buy a Dataverse add-on, like there is a capacity add-on for database. You can just buy that to add a new environment, or you can buy any of the premium licenses like PowerApps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent. All of them, when you the moment a person buys a premium license, the tenant gets a default of 10 GB additional capacity. Now, one license is good enough to start creating another environment, and every other license you buy adds up to the tenant level pool. So usually one of bigger customers actually have a lot of capacity, so they don't run into these problems of I don't have enough space to create an environment.
So Priya, is this true? If I just buy one premium license and my tenant automatically starts with 10 GB then?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's a big takeaway from me right here is just have one license. You straight away can build up to then what, 10 environments more?
Correct.
Wow. Okay, did not know that. Thank you, Priya. Going to the next one. Again, a very good question. Something that when I build videos on flows, I think I really love that approval feature, and I know everybody tries to build approvals in using Power Automate. So here's a great question: does a flow approver, the person who is approving it, do they need a premium license? And is approvals itself a premium feature?
Approval connector by itself is not a premium feature, and we don't consider the person who is approving as invoking the flow. It's like somewhere in the flow is waiting for that particular person to respond, but that person is not invoking the flow itself. So if you have a premium flow and you have an approval in it, the approver does not need a premium license. Just the owner needs it, and it depends upon. Yeah, if it is an automated, again, just the owner. If it's an instant flow, other users too.
And here's one key takeaway here. Somebody had asked me this question as well once. Reza, I have another environment that does not have a database. So they created a second environment without a database, and they tried to use approvals, and the approval action failed, stating that you need a database. Well, approvals are actually stored in Microsoft Dataverse, whether you like it or not. That action is considered standard, right? Even though you're interacting with Dataverse, it's considered standard. However, you need a database for that. In the default environment, the moment the first approval action is created in a tenant, automatically the database gets created for you. That database is kind of a free space given to you initially to get started with. That's why approvals in the default environment technically do not require any database or any capacity or any additional aspects to it. But in a non-default environment, you need the database at least to start using approvals. You don't need premium licensing, but you need the database. And I think that's a very key point that it's very important to understand. Having said all of this as well, in Microsoft Dataverse for Teams, I did a series on this. So in there, if you actually trigger approvals, it doesn't trigger immediately, because you know what happens at the back end? It's a new environment. I am creating an approval action. So there's a job that runs that starts creating those approval tables so that you can start interacting and start creating those approval actions. So it's very important to understand how approvals truly works. And does it require premium licensing? No. Does it require a database? Yes, depends upon the environment in which you're creating the flow. All right. Next question, last question before we go to live Q&A. And Priya, we are right on time. Check that out. 1 hour. Okay. So for developers, apart from the free trials that we spoke about earlier, is there any way they can utilize premium features like custom connectors? They're developing, they're testing custom connectors, premium connectors, stuff like the AI builder maybe. Is there a plan that they can utilize for this?
They have a community plan. So community plan gives them premium access, but again, premium connector access, but RPA, business process flows, AI builder, these are not included as part of the community plan. But they can go try out with premium features. And another thing with community plan is it is just for developer environments only. It's not intended to use for production databases.
Perfect. Thank you, Priya. So these covered our seeded questions, and I wanted to give my subscribers the first privilege to ask those questions. Now we come to live Q&A. So if you've asked a question before, I'll recommend you to ask the question again because I'm going to start from the bottom. I think the chat has gone crazy. I see a lot of folks answering questions. I see Karsten. Hi, Karsten. I see Krishna. Hi, Krishna. There was Dan earlier as well. So hello everyone, and sorry if I missed someone. Uh, so let's try and take live Q&A. The first question here, and I like this one actually, Priya, is from Raja. It's great to hear that one premium license will give 10 GB of capacity because that's the first one I'm acquiring in my tenant. Mm-hmm. Is there any documentation link for this?
Yeah, there is. So the licensing documentation, and I'm looking at it right now. So if you go to see Power Platform licensing documentation, in that there is a very specific section about Dataverse capacity, and that talks about this limit. So look for Dataverse capacity in licensing documentation.
Perfect. I put the link in the chat. I put the link to that licensing guide, that I think that 100-pager. Okay.
It's only 30 pages. It's not bad.
Okay, Phil. This is not a question, but a good point that Phil highlighted, and I wanted to bring that up, is that the community plan is now being rebranded and renamed. It's now called the developer plan. So thank you, Phil, for highlighting that, and it's important for folks to know that it is called the developer plan. Okay, looking at additional questions. Here's a question from Krishna. Krishna is asking if my app is using the per app plan. So I'm assuming this is PowerApps per app, and it is shared with 20,000 users. Am I good to purchase one per app plan, or do I need to purchase a license for all 20,000 users? So the per app plan, Krishna, is per user, as I kind of stressed it. It is per app per user. So in this case, every user would need that premium license. So if it's just one app, you can buy the $5 license effective October 1st, and you can assign that to your 20,000 users, assuming your app uses premium connectors. If it does not, the standard licensing will suffice. Okay. Here is a question again. This is from Baji Rao Peshwa. We have some royal treatment here as well. What will happen if a user who uses the standard, who has standard connector access? So let's say a user with a standard license. What happens if they use premium actions for more than 90 days? I'm assuming this is being related to the trial Priya. What happens if it goes beyond 90 days? Will it stop or ask for a license upgrade? What's going to happen to that app or that flow?
There is, like, if it is an admin trial, it will stop and it will ask you to upgrade. It won't, and there is an easy way to convert the trial environments into production environments too, so you won't lose any work. But if it is a user trial, today we allow multiple renewals, so you can get additional, but that don't bank on it. Like Reza said, those things can stop at any point of time. Only plan for the first 90 days. Today you can extend it, I think, one more time, but don't like we would highly recommend you to go buy a premium license if that is a business critical flow for you.
Okay, moving on to the next one. This one's from, again, I'm just randomly picking questions, guys. I know there's a lot of questions coming in, and uh, we have a time limit, so I'm going to try and respect that. Thing I want to call out right away is Priya and I will still answer your questions. So once I close this live session, the video would be on my YouTube channel. So you can go into comments and ask your questions there. Priya has actually volunteered to come and answer questions there as well. So a double thank you to Priya for that. So if you want to, if I don't cover your question here, don't be disappointed. You can go to my channel, go to the video and just post the question there. And I and Priya will try and answer as much as we can. Okay.
And you have 1 week to do so.
Yeah, there's a time limit for that. Okay. So here's a question from Martin. What about Power Apps for Teams and custom connectors using Azure API? Do we need a premium license or a capacity for that? I think I'll take this. Dataverse for Teams, when I covered those sessions, if you're building using Dataverse for Teams, if you use Azure API management and publish your custom connectors, they are treated as standard connectors inside Dataverse for Teams environments. In that case, you do not need a premium license. However, you need to bear the cost of the Azure. The Azure cost won't be free, so you'll have to pay for that, but you do not need a premium license. Great question. All right, moving on to the next question, which I think is a good one for Priya. Is there a limit on pagination count? Does that count as API? So for example, if I'm paginating through a bunch of records, like here you go, 10,000 records, is that counted in my API calls as well?
Yes, pagination adds more API calls. This is something we covered in one of the previous slides, right? Yes, just like loops, pagination also, because it is grabbing multiple times, it adds up to the API calls.
Perfect. A question here from David that was answered by Carson, but I wanted to highlight it on the call is, what's the cost of that community plan, or which is now called developer plan? Is there a price associated with it?
No, it's free.
So you heard it. It's a free plan which every user can go and sign up for. It's per user. They can go sign up. They get their own environment. I believe the only thing they can't do there literally is sharing. Apart from that, they can use any of the premium actions, build custom connectors, everything for free. So you heard that right. It's free. Okay. Next question. I think I'm going to bring this up. Is from Amir. It's a good point, and I think Priya is working on something, so maybe she can throw light on that here. And many people have this question, Priya, is that I wish the licensing was simpler, right? API calls, premium licenses, which connectors am I using? Am I using seeded license? Am I using a combination of things here? So the question here is, what is the future here? Can we have like a magic documentation guide wherein I can just plug something in and it just tells me that here's the output?
Okay, magic documentation guide that plugs. That's interesting. So there is something that I'm working on to, because I've been hearing these questions time and time again. I want to update our documentation and answer a bunch of these questions there. So this is something that I promised my LinkedIn users that we'll go answer every single licensing question in the document. So that's really the goal. And that I plan to publish it in the next couple of months. So that's coming in, but it does not give you that plug and play where you cannot type in a scenario and it tells you how many. So that's a little tough to do.
That's a little far off. Okay.
Yeah. But I think the question here is slightly different too. It's like, one thing is we can address with documentation. What it tells is like, here is our complex licensing and here is a documentation on how you can understand it. I think the question was more like, why can I have just more simpler plans? That is something we are looking for feedback. How would you like it? So please feel free to comment it on the YouTube post here, because I would love to know what makes sense to you, what makes it easier for you to understand, and see if we can change things around to meet that.
And I think communication and documentation are two key aspects here. Like Priya, you just mentioned today 10 GB when you create your first. I did not know that. I'll be very honest with you. I had no clue about that. So that makes me really happy. So I think uh, if we have clear documentation, uh, and Q&A style documentation like we are doing right here, I think that would really connect with the audience. All right. I promised I'll take as many questions as we can, so I'll keep going ahead here. Here's a question from Manish. We have 80 users with 2000 API calls a day. So I'm assuming your users have standard licensing. Each user gets 2000 API calls in a 24-hour period. So Manish is kind of calculating that and saying, okay, we have 60,000 total. But only two people are owning flows. Maybe there are only two accounts that are creating flows. So those two accounts can only have maximum of 6,000. Sorry, 4,000. So Manish, wrong man. Okay. Why can't those remaining API calls be applied to the owners is the question.
So that means that like today API calls are not pooled. So Dataverse capacity is pooled at the tenant level, but API calls are very specific for the user, and there is a real need for it. So if I and Reza are both at the same tenant, and if we pool our API request,
Okay.
Reza is a heavy user. He creates a video every single day. He creates a bunch of flows, and he goes up and uses up the entire pool. Now I go try to run my flow. I don't have any actions left, and my flow will perpetually be throttled all the time. So to give users that container where they can go execute their flows without being impacted by other users, the API requests are not pulled and it is per user. Again, the licenses that you bought is per user. So it has to be by a particular user.
Perfect. So it's not pooled, it is per user. Period.
Correct.
All right. Next question, which I feel is a good question here from Chelu Muri. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. So it looks like the action count and usage. So basically, Priya, when I went to the flow analytics to count how many API calls it consumed, the question is it's not immediate. How long is the wait time before I can see the action count?
Um, I I believe the answer is up to 48
48
hours.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can double check that. Is it 24 or 48? I think it is 48, but there is a delay absolutely because it needs to propagate into multiple data pipelines to show there.
Perfect. All right. Next question here is from Murthy. Will Microsoft release any grandfather license for new users?
No, grandfather by definition is something that we no longer will allow to purchase. We will support, like for example, you already have a plan, you signed a contract 5 years ago. We won't change that on you now, but we will support you until the end of the agreement. But after that, you will not be able to renew nor buy the older licenses.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next question. For Power Apps, this is from RK. For Power Apps, is the licensing model, does it behave the same for a Canvas app or a portal? Power Apps portals require Dataverse. Dataverse is premium. So by design, portals are premium. You need premium licensing for portals. In fact, portals kind of goes beyond the premium licensing realm as well. It depends if it's for anonymous access, it's for authenticated external access. There are different layers to licensing for portals. So if you are using Power Apps portals, period, you need premium licensing. If you're using a Canvas app, it depends. It depends whether the app is using standard connectors or it has any premium connector. So the answer to it is the classic, it depends. But portals is definitely a premium action. So it's very, very important to understand that. Okay. Looking at the next question, I think I like this question. I really like this question a lot. In fact, I had asked this question in one of the MVP calls. I remember this long back when the API calls limits were being introduced. So Adrian is asking this question. If a user triggers a flow from Power Apps, do the API counts count towards the user who's calling the flow or the person who created the flow?
Because Power Apps and instant flows run in the context of the user who is invoking, it is the user's API limits that are going to be counted against.
Counted
But
against.
again, yeah, say if it is automated scheduled, whoever uses it, how many ever people go upload new items into SharePoint, the owner's API throttle limits will be limits will be drawn from.
Perfect. Okay. Next question is from Anoop Kumar. I'm just going to take two or three more questions, guys. So here's the question from Anoop. Any scenario we can think of having license for only one common service account rather than having it for all users? So the reason why I brought this question up is because what many folks end up doing, Priya, is, well, I'm not going to license all my accounts. I'll just create one service account, give it the premium license, get the nice 10 GB capacity that you told me. And on top of that, I will build all my flows using that service account. So the question is, what challenges can they run into? Like if
Um,
this was the intention, that's my follow-up question.
I would say the intention of service account is to enable business continuity without being tied to people as in case they leave organization or etc. It is not intended to be used as a way to reduce the number of licenses. So I think I understand you want to reduce the number of licenses and we want to make money. We do not want you to reduce the number of licenses.
Yeah.
We want you to buy per user licenses. The thing that you would run into with service accounts though, you would still need to give it a per user license, means that you get that API limits, like the 5,000 API limits, you will be, now all of your flows, once it reaches that limits, will start getting throttled. That is the problem you would run into.
Perfect. Okay, moving on to the next question. Again, a good question. This one is from Abu Bakr. I have been using a premium connector so in the past he had a app or a flow which connected to Azure SQL. It's been running for more than 4 years. Will it stop working because now SQL is a premium connector? What happens to a SQL connection I made 4 years ago and the app or the flow is still running? What will happen
So
to it in future?
yeah, the reason why it is still running is because you're on the grandfathered plan, and until the tenure ends for the grandfathered plan, that will continue to work. But once that agreement expires, it will become a premium, and you would have to pay for it.
Perfect. All right. And now I'll take one last question. This is from Yoga. If I create a flow, but the flow is never run, I believe that one does not get charged for it. So I'm assuming this is more around, let's say, not licensing, but maybe API calls in that sense. Yes, it won't get charged. But Priya, what about licensing? I want to create a flow that uses a premium connector, but the flow never runs.
Mhm. This is the plans that we have today are prepaid. So that means that you have to buy ahead of time. It doesn't matter whether the flow runs or not. Once it is assigned to that user, they are free to create unlimited plans. There are no refunds, like because they haven't created flows or haven't used that. There is no we don't offer any more refunds just because of that.
Perfect. And many folks asked for the licensing guide, so I've just pasted that link in the chat window. You can reach out to Priya, you can reach out to me. This video will be live, will be available on YouTube, so you can binge watch it later. You can ask your questions in the chat. We will in the comments basically, so we'll try and answer those questions as well. And I think we had a fantastic audience of consistently over 100. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Priya, for taking time out and on a weekend, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. That's really early. So on a weekend. So thank you once again. I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope the questions were simple.
Yeah, they were, and please feel free to ask more complex questions too, because sometimes these things make us think, okay, should we make a change so that it becomes easier? So please feel free to ask questions. Thank you again for showing up and asking so many questions. We will go back and answer every single one of them. Please feel free to ask more questions in the first week, because first week we will absolutely answer. Thank you so much, Reza, for giving me this opportunity. Really enjoyed that session. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Priya. And for all folks here live with Reza, this was the last session for this season. I did 6 live sessions now. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you. I will come back. I promise I'll come back with another season. I'll plan some good content. And I will come back. Dan, Christian, and Reza Dorani are planning a live show on Fridays. We are in planning right now, so you will hear more about it soon. In the meanwhile, of course, I'll be posting videos like crazy, so keep following. And thank you so much once again. Uh, See you
Like
all
and
next time.
subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe.
I'm very shy to ask that. So thank you, Priya.
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
subscribe. All right. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
everyone. Bye. Bye.